up, Greenville? Man, do y'all hate waiting? Is it not the most awkward thing ever? I mean, to wait. I mean, it can be really uncomfortable when we're in that time of waiting. And I know there's some things that aggravate me and frustrate me, and I can't stand about waiting. And I'm curious if you're like me, and I'm going to share what some of those are and see if you would agree. How do you feel about waiting on slow walkers? People that, not like zombies, but like, well, yes, sort of, but slow walkers, right? Or people that walk in text real slow, and you're like, dude, I got somewhere to be. Or maybe you hate waiting when you see the dots pop up on your phone when somebody's supposed to be responding back to you in a text. Drives me crazy. It's like it doesn't come fast enough. Or if somebody elects to pay with the exact change to the penny and they're digging through their purse or they're digging through their pockets to try to get it, and you're just like, come on, are you kidding me? Maybe it's commercials that you can't stand. You hate waiting for the program, which is why a lot of us record stuff so that we can skip right through that. How many of you have a hard time waiting on the microwave to go through a full 60-second cycle? And if you're like me, you're like, you put your finger like right here, and you're waiting, and you can't wait! I stop it with 3 seconds every time, and it has nothing to do with the ding. I'm not scared of the ding. I just can't wait the last 3 seconds. Who does that? Come on. Somebody tell me to do that. Okay, I got some hallelujahs in the back. Thank you. How about something that's buffering? Like if you're streaming a program or something like that, and you got the pinwheel of death, or you've got, the hourglass that is an hour glass, and you're just like, seriously, come on. What about elevator doors? Does anybody here hate elevator doors? There's never an elevator that I get into where I push the button and it goes, and I go. Never, ever. I get in, I push the button, try to find I never can figure out which one's the close and the open button. They got triangles on them pointing. I'm like, what is the algorithm to get this door to shut? It finally starts to shut, and it's like, you're like, it's gonna, and somebody goes, oh, thank you. Thanks for holding the elevator. It's like, no problem. I'm just a nice guy, right? Finally, the elevator shuts, and you go, it drives me crazy. Or how about indecisive people at McDonald's? It's McDonald's. You've been there 255 times. How do you not know what you want? Why are you looking at the menu? Order. Get out the way. It's my turn. Let's go. What about waiting rooms? Any waiting room. It could be a doctor's office or whatever. The DMV. Oh, God. Waiting rooms are the worst. When you walk into a waiting room, don't people look like death? Not just because it's a doctor's office, but it could be a DMV, right? Somebody walks in, or you walk in, and everybody just kind of goes, we've been here forever. They told me to show up 30 minutes early, but I'm still waiting. Why do they do that, right? What about the room temperature? You walk into a room, and it's too hot. So you go over to the thermostat. What do you set it to? 40 degrees. So it cools off fast. It doesn't cool off faster. But we think it does. We can't stand to wait. We got to do whatever we can to speed things up. I did that with traffic the other day. There was plenty of traffic, kind of stop and go. And I knew that there was an alternate route. And I went the alternate route. And if you're like me, you look at the cars that are ahead of you to see if you see them when you go your alternate route, to see if you actually made up time or not. I just need to be moving, right? I just don't like the wait. I don't care if I got to drive a little bit further as long as I'm moving. Is there anybody like that? I'm that way. What about vacations? Have any of y'all powered through the vacation traveling? It's like, okay, here's how this is going to go down. You need to take your pillows and your blankets. I suggest you take an empty 2-liter to urinate in on the way. We will go through drive-thrus, and we will move on. We won't stop and sleep. You sleep in the car. When you switch out with your partner that's that's also driving, you do like Smokey and the Bandit, right? Where you're sliding over across the console. Hold on, cruise control. And then you're back, because you do not want to lose time. You cannot wait to get to your destination. Maybe it's for a preacher to stop preaching. It could be anything that you just can't wait. And then there's some serious things. Some of those are a little bit funny. To me, some of those are pretty serious. But then there's some really serious things like test results. Waiting on test results can be just, it could just really rock our worlds waiting for those, or to find out the results of a job interview. Some people struggle waiting for marriage to have sex. The thought of them waiting that amount of time to find the right person and be pure up until that point. People don't do that. They can't wait. They want the instant gratification right away. Same thing with getting well. Some of us, have been dealing with illnesses and sicknesses, or we have people in our family that are dealing with that kind of stuff. And the waiting for them to get better can be just overwhelming and can drive us crazy. Or maybe it's somebody in their relationship, they're trying to get pregnant and they can't. And they wait and they keep trying and they try all these different things. But it just doesn't seem to happen. But we oftentimes want to skip the waiting. We want the instant gratification now. What's the shortcut, right? How can I get there faster? But here's the thing. There are consequences to not waiting. There are negative consequences to not waiting. I mean, if you look at debt, for example, the reason why many of us are in debt is because we can't wait for what we want now. So we find ourselves getting credit cards to pay for it so we can get it now, so we can pay it off later. All those types of things happen. The average debt, and in many cases it's just credit cards, is $16,000 of just credit card debt. That's crazy, $16,000 of credit card debt. That's the average, and that's up 10% from 2006. Some of the other negative consequences to not waiting is bad relationships. We want a relationship so bad sometimes, whether it's dating type of relationship or whether it is, just a friendship. We just want to find somebody to be close to, whatever the case may be, and we can't wait for the right person, and we get ourselves into these bad relationships. We talked about sex before marriage just a few minutes ago, some of the negative things that come from that. Children are born all the time outside of wedlock and those types of things. And there's disease that happens because people just can't wait. We have no patience, none at all. And I think many of us can say that we've also been in the waiting room of life before. We've been in God's waiting room, so to speak, praying for God to answer some of our prayers and to help us with some of those things that we've been waiting for. And we're waiting for Him to answer, and we're waiting for Him to show up. And that waiting room, God's waiting room, or the waiting room of life, can be very difficult to sit in. What is God doing? We just don't understand why He's not answering. He says He loves us. His Word says He loves us. He sent His Son, but why is He not paying attention to me? Why is He not helping me? Why is He not answering my prayers? And then I'm reminded of Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8, which says, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts." This is the Lord. "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine." We struggle with this so much, right? We're talking about the Lord, God, the creator of the universe, and we feel like we somehow know what He's thinking or know what He should do. in our lives. And I oftentimes compare that to a child and a parent. You know, a parent, more times than not, knows more than the child does and knows what's best for the child. And oftentimes the child is like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you not letting me do this or do that? Or why can't I have this now? Come on. Because that child just doesn't understand and know the things that the parent knows. The parent's understanding is far greater than that child's understanding. Yet we have a difficult time comprehending and accepting the fact that the God of the universe who created us might know a little bit more than we know and might know what's best for us. So why don't we get our way? Why doesn't He help us a little bit quicker? Sometimes it's just too much for us to handle. Whatever your thing may be. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's a job. Whatever. But maybe it's just too much for you to bear at that time. And He just knows what's best. The fact that we can't handle it right now. We've got to wait a little bit longer. We've got to mature a little bit more. We're just not ready. And again, He knows what's best for us. Mark chapter 8, verse 36 says this. What good is it? Again, He's saying, how does this benefit you? What good is it for someone to gain the whole world with all its pleasures, yet forfeit their soul? We would easily say, what good is it to give a kid everything they want? Why would we do that? You know how that kid would turn out, right? So why is that any different for us? What good is it for us to gain the whole world yet forfeit our soul? Psalms 27:14 says, to wait for the Lord. Wait for Him. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. So they're telling it's important for us to wait on the Lord. It's critical. In His mind, in God's mind, there is no problems with waiting. There is no issue with waiting. And if you think about that, parents are the same way. No matter how often the kid gets upset and kicks and screams, the parent knows that, look, I know what's best. There's no harm in waiting for the right time. Waiting for them to mature, teaching them discipline and to grow stronger. And waiting can also make us more like Christ. So again, we're being developed as we are waiting. Waiting is one of God's most powerful tools, and we have to recognize that. When God is trying to teach us and when God is trying to draw us closer to Him, one of the tools that He uses is waiting. And we have to recognize that despite how much we hate waiting, it drives us crazy, He is working on us through that waiting. So there are some things that we can learn while we are in the waiting. When we are in God's waiting room, there are some things that we can learn, and I want to share those with you. There's 37 of them. Just why y'all laughing? You assume that's a joke? It is. It is. That's right. It's like, okay. Now, I'm going to talk about 5 things that we can learn while we're in the waiting room. Okay, and some of these, I've kind of learned from just researching and studying the Bible, the lives of Noah and Moses. If you want to read stories about how people had to wait on the Lord, these are people you can read about and study. Moses and Noah and Abraham. And then his disciples having to wait. Jesus' disciples having to wait as well. You can read these stories and just see how they had to wait and what they did and what you can kind of see happen in their life. And then I can relate to waiting as well. And I can kind of share a little bit what that was like in my life. And so I'm going to do that as I talk about these 5 opportunities or things to learn. The first one is delays are not denials. You know, as kids, we had to learn the difference between no and not yet. And as a kid, they were the same, right? If I had a chocolate donut and then I wanted another chocolate donut and you said, no, that's enough, you can have one later or you can have one tomorrow, you were telling me no. You weren't telling me not yet, and I threw a fit. And now that I've grown up, honestly, I'm pretty close to a lot like I was when I was a kid. It might not be about chocolate donuts. Sometimes it is when Shay doesn't let me have chocolate donuts and I want one now. And she said, not yet, and that's no. But there are other serious things that we experience in our lives. And those things, again, for you could be this job that you're wanting so bad or that you're needing. It could be that relationship or healing that we talked about. Or anything as how we're trying to pursue our purpose. His delays are not our denials. And I can remember 10 years ago recognizing that God was calling me to do ministry, full-time ministry. And I had served in this church, for some time, but God was calling me to teach about Him, to teach His Word. 10 years ago, actually a little over, it was 2007 when God spoke to me, when it hit me. And I just knew that that's what He wanted me to do. 10 years ago. Now, if you don't know this, I have been preaching as the full-time pastor since October, I think. And I recommend AC/DC ringtones, by the way. That's my preference. Better make sure my phone's turned down. Somebody gonna call me. But I have no idea what I was talking. Okay, so 2007, 10 years ago, is when God was telling me that this is what I needed to do. So it's like, okay, now, what am I supposed to do? When am I supposed to do it? How is this going to go down? And again, it was 10 years before it actually happened that I was to preach and teach on a full-time basis. I could have easily, early in that time, said, okay, it hasn't happened, so He's telling me no, so I might as well just go a different route. And don't think that I didn't have those conversations with my wife at night, wondering if I'm doing the right thing, still working at UPS, being on the preaching team. Is this what He meant? Do you think this is what He meant? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go somewhere else? How's this supposed to go down? But we can't get discouraged in the delays. We can't be discouraged in the waiting, because it doesn't necessarily mean no. It may just mean not yet. The second thing, in the waiting, God may be doing something in you before doing something for you. And there is no doubt in my mind that in that waiting time for me, and maybe it's in the waiting time for you right now, God was teaching me to be humble. He didn't want to give me things right away because I'd get cocky, right? And I'd be like, I'd start to feel like maybe I did this on my own. And that God really didn't have anything to do with it. So oftentimes in that waiting, He is teaching me to be humble. And to rely on Him and to seek Him more. So that I'm not like this little spoiled brat who gets everything I want when I ask for it. But to be humble. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 6 says this. Trust in the Lord. What? Trust. What? Trust in the Lord. With all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. We all already talked about how great He is and how we're almost like children. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His what?
Will.
Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. So in that moment, in that waiting, He is teaching me to trust Him. He is teaching me to seek His will, not mine. He is teaching me to abide in Him. Now that's not a word that we use very often, abide. But when I look back, I remember my dad telling me to abide. What followed that? Abide what? Abide by my rules. If you want to live in this house, you'll abide by my rules. You'll follow. You'll do what I say. You'll accept my rules. You'll act accordingly. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to abide in Him. We're to follow Him. We're to accept Him. To accept His rules and His will instead of our own. And the way that we can abide in Him is doing what He asks you to do. Also praying. Doing Bible studies, whatever the case may be. But doing things in His will. There's no doubt in my mind that for me and maybe for you, whether it's seeking a job or again the relationships, whatever the case may be, even healing, you may not be ready yet. And He may still be teaching you and preparing you. And then you'll be ready. And you think, even with healing, even with making me better, if the goal of waiting many times is to draw us closer to Him and to help us trust Him more, maybe we're not doing that yet. Maybe we're just not mature enough to do those things yet. And He's preparing us and He's getting us ready. I think one thing that we need to remember, because I think waiting, sometimes we feel like that's sitting around like a bump on a log doing nothing. Or that's easy to sit around and wait. But it really is not. Waiting takes as much faith as does taking that first step. To wait on the Lord takes a ton of faith. As much faith as it does to take that first big step. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 says this. Now faith is confident in what we hope for, that it will actually happen. And assurance about what we do not see. And I can tell you, 10 years ago, I could not see what He had planned for me. I knew what He was calling me to, but I didn't know exactly what it looked like. And everything that would happen, if the wind blew the pages in the Bible and it landed on a spot, I was like, ooh, maybe that's what God's wanting me to read today. Maybe that's what God has for me today. Maybe you're in that stage right now where you want something so bad and you've asked God so much that even right now you're going, God, is this sermon for me? Are you asking me to wait on you? It's having faith, being confident that He's going to come through. The next thing, in the waiting, God's purpose is bigger than my desires. Listen, God's purpose is bigger than your desires. And we have to remember that. Luke chapter 22 verse 42 says this. Father, this is Jesus talking to His Father. Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. So He's in the Garden of Gethsemane and He's praying to the Lord and He knows that it's time for Him to go to the cross, and He's saying, Lord, if there is any way that you could take this from me, if you are willing. But He says, yet I want your will to be done, not mine. And I can tell you that 10 years ago, leading up to this time, I felt God was calling me to teach here And it didn't make sense to me, and I'm talking full-time, all right? Because I was teaching prior to that, but teaching full-time. And it didn't make sense to me because they already had a staff of pastors that worked here. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe that's when we grow. Maybe I can come on and join the staff with them. Maybe I need to, sell stuff and maybe they can pay me just a little bit. Whatever the case may be, I was trying to figure out what does that mean and what does that look like. But I really felt like God was calling me here, but it wasn't happening. So then I started to go, well, maybe that's not what He wants. Maybe it's a no. And one of the people that helped me kind of recognize that was Pastor Michael. He was our previous preacher here. And we were out to dinner. It was us and the wives, and we were at Tumbleweed, and we was talking, and we did it all the time. And he asked me, he was like, are you called to teach? Are you called to preach full-time as a pastor, as a teacher? And I was like, yes, I believe that He has called me. And I said, and I also believe that He's called me to Greenville. And he goes, no. Have you been called to preach and to teach on a full-time basis? And I was like, well, yes. And he said, well, then you will go wherever He takes you. And that resonated with me. And it made me think, well, is it just my desire because I love Greenville and I love the people and it's something that I'm familiar with? Is it my desire or is it God's will? Now, I do believe that God was calling me to teach here regardless. Regardless. Which is why I taught with the kids, which is why I taught Bible studies and did different things like that, because I felt God was calling me to that. But I had to ask that question, is this my desire or is this His will? And I began to pray and pray and pray. God, whatever Your will is in my life, may I see it and may I go for it. And this needs to be the same for all of us. Whether He's calling you to teach the Word of God in your workplace, or maybe full-time in a church, or maybe it's these jobs that He's calling you to, or relationships that He's calling you to. Make sure that your desires are not getting in the way of His will. And it took people like Pastor Michael to help me to recognize that. And it took God's Word to help me to recognize that. Here's the other thing that we need to do in the waiting. And that is to stay active. It can't be like a waiting room at the doctor's office or at the DMV where we're just sitting there. Could you imagine if you rolled up in there and you're like, well, I'm going to do my workout routine. You're in the DMV. Yeah. And you're making the best out of it, right? And you're trying to be productive and do things. People will look at you like you're crazy. But there are times that in the waiting, God is calling us. Even though we're waiting for a specific time or a specific thing to happen, He wants you to be active in the waiting. Don't just sit there. For me, that was teaching the kids downstairs. That was being on the preaching team. And sometimes the preaching team, I was never up here preaching. It was just collaborating with Pastor Michael and some other people, and we just brainstormed ideas for sermons and different things like that. It was praying for the sermons. It was praying for teaching and that people would learn. But it was being active instead of me being in pout mode, which I can be in when I'm waiting on something and fussing and grumpy. But it was to have joy in the waiting. To remember that He's working on me in the waiting. And to be excited about that. Yes, be excited about the destination and the outcome and those types of things, but be passionate and exciting and find joy in the waiting and what He's doing in our lives. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 14. But you must remain faithful. See, we can't lose our faith when we're in God's waiting room. We have to keep believing. But you must remain faithful to the things you have been taught. You know they are true. Here's the thing, like growing up, I knew my dad loved me. I knew my mom loved me. And they disciplined me, and they made me wait a lot of times. And there were things that they did for me to show me love, like feed me, send me to a school that taught me discipline so I wouldn't end up in jail and prison, which would be pretty easy if you look back at my history and some of the people that I used to run with. Very close to making some terrible choices. But I remember the things that my mom and my dad did in my life. But there was times when I had to wait, and there was things that I couldn't have when I wanted them. But I remembered what they taught me and what they'd done for me in the past. So why would I lose faith in them in this season or in this moment of waiting? It's no different with God. Think about the things that He's done in your life. Think about the things that He's brought you through. Think about the things that you've had to wait for in the past and that He has come through in your life. Why now? Because maybe it's a little bit longer, or maybe it's been 10 years where we're like, you know what? Maybe there is no God. Or maybe there is, or maybe He just don't care about us that much that He's involved in our lives. We start to do that. But we cannot lose faith. Remember what He's done. In the waiting, we have to trust His timing. When I was a kid, I did not trust my dad's timing or my mom's timing. They didn't know what they were talking about. I wanted something now. I remember that with a car. I wanted this big 4-wheel drive pickup truck. I was a Hank Williams Jr. listening. Wanted to drive a truck so bad with big mutter tires that got like 6 miles to the gallon. That's what I wanted. And I was like, there was a guy with a truck up for sale up the road that fit the criteria for this redneck, okay? And I was like, yes. And my dad was like, you're crazy. I was like 16 and a half, going on 17. He's like, no, you don't need that truck. You do not need that truck. And I was like, Dad, but I want that truck, man. That's exactly what I want. God put that for sale right up the hill for me. I pass it every day. He's saying, that's your truck. That's your truck. And he's like, no, it gets 6 miles to the gallon. You drive this far, you don't make that much money. The money that you would make to pay for the truck would take out your checking account, and then you'd have to put gas in. You couldn't do that. And I looked at him living in his home, and I said, I got the money in my account. It's my money. I'm going to do what I want. Go ahead, give me some. Oh, that's fine. I didn't get the truck. And I can't say that it was fully because I listened to my dad, to be honest with you. I don't remember the circumstances, but it didn't happen. But I look back on that now and I'm like, I would love to go back in time, get the DeLorean, flux capacitor, and go back in time and kick myself in the butt sometime. Who here would love to do that? Not to me. Put your hand down. To yourself. I want to be clear. Right? Wouldn't you love to do that? And I think about those times and what God or what my dad or my mom was teaching me in those moments. And in this time, 10 years of God teaching me in the waiting to wait for Him and to trust Him and to seek Him and to allow Him to grow me. Then when it was time and He said, it's time, now is the time, He blew me away. I just want to share a couple things with you. So, I remember going to the elders and I was like, I felt like God's calling me to teach here full time. And they were like, for reals? And I was like, for reals. But we weren't in a position as a church to pay a pastor. We weren't in a position as a church to publicize and hire a pastor and have them to come in and say, well, this is what we got to offer you. And they'd be like, okay, so. And they were clear with that. They were like, we're not in a position for you to be the pastor here. Okay, we would love it, but we're not in that position to do that right now. There's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. How do y'all feel about that? And we talked for months about that. They prayed about that. They talked to each other. They talked to me. And when it became clear to them that that's what they felt like God was calling me to and them to for me to be the full-time pastor here, it was then a question of, all right, then what do we do about it? All right, we're in agreement, but how do we do it? I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to sell everything that I got, and just how are we going to do it? And we started doing numbers and doing all kinds of things, and it was like, well, maybe we ought to wait till the end of the year. And it was like, no, God says now. And they said, yeah, we feel that too, but. And sometimes we got to get the but out of the way. And when we come to the decision that let's do it, God went crazy. There was, so I went to my boss, and I'm like, I had just got promoted, by the way, earlier in the year. And I said, so I like my job, I love y'all great, but I'm going to leave, okay? God's calling me to go teach and to preach. And the celebration, the response that I got from my bosses that I shared that with was off the charts, loving and encouraging. And then, of course, I leave, and the day for my last day to come up is coming, and I'm like, oh, this is for real? This is about to happen? And then a family gave me and my wife, or gave the church to give me and my wife, like $7,000. That's $7,000. Okay? To help with this. The elders looked at things and how they can make things to where we have more than enough. That we could have insurance and we could have, go to the dentist and all these things. God came through. These men, you guys, came through. Oh, it ain't, look, check this out. So then we get this money to help sustain, because when you resign from the place that you work, they stop paying y'all. I don't know if you knew that or not. So they stopped paying me. And this money was able to help sustain some things, because we put our house up for sale. We were like, when do we put it up for sale? It's like, we're getting ready to quit. When does this happen? When does this happen? We said, okay, let's put it up for sale now. Debbie and Andrew, who go to church here, we put the house up for sale. It was, we got about 6 or so people scheduled to see our house. Basically, the first person that saw the house ended up making us an offer on the house in less than 12 hours, a cash offer. A cash offer. No inspection, no nothing, as is, cash offer. Now, it was a little less than we asked for, just a smidge. And it's like, God, are you kidding me right now? It makes my hair stand, not this hair, it makes my hair stand up thinking about it. Cash offer? Within 12 hours of putting our house up for sale, he's showing off. And then they were doing the extreme home makeover on the parsonage right next door over here. And there was a point where, like, just weeks up to that, we looked in the window and nothing looked like it was done. And we're like, oh my goodness. And we were putting our house up for sale. And we're like, this ain't going to work out right. We ain't going to have a place to live. We're going to have to live with your mama. We're start talking about these things. And when we accepted the cash offer, Shay reached out to the contractor who was working on the house and said, so what happened was, we just accepted cash on the house. And we're supposed to be out in like 2 weeks. So, we're just wondering where you at on that. Oh, we just finished. It's like, shut up! Shut up! Like, when? No, like, the same day. Listen, the same day that we accepted the cash offer, they were done. You're ready to move in. Here's the key. Come on. Are you kidding me? And more and more and more, God validates that when we wait and we're faithful, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I was the holy roller in the waiting and that I was, just good. I mean, I kicked and screamed sometimes, and there was times when I was faithful and times when I wasn't that faithful. But once he knew that the time was right and he had prepared me and he had humbled me and he saw that I was seeking him because I knew that he could do it, that I couldn't do it on my own. When I became faithful in that, then he said, check this out. Boom, 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 boom. So, guess what? I will wait now whenever he tells me to wait. If he says nope, I'll be like, okay, I'm right here. I trust you. You always come through. And I hope that you get something out of my story. And that I hope that you read stories like Moses and Noah and see what happened in their life as well. And how in the waiting, how God came through. So here's my challenge to you guys. My challenge is that you will find strength in him when you are in the waiting. And you need to pray for that. You need to be praying for strength in the waiting. Remember what he's done in your life. Here's the second thing. You need to be praying for and you need to be asking for God to recognize when he is teaching you in the waiting. That you are open to his teaching while you're in the waiting. So those are the two things. Pray that he strengthens you to trust him in the waiting and that he prepares your heart to be taught while in the waiting.
We're going to do a song. It's called Do It Again. And reading on the song, it's in reference to a sermon series that they did called Don't Stop at 6. And it's in reference to back in the Old Testament when there are, Joshua and the Israelites and trying to get to the promised land. And God tells them to walk around the walls of Jericho 7 times. And, the whole thing is don't stop at 6. What if they stopped? What if, they're being asked to do something crazy, right? And it's like, I don't even know if I'd even start with 1 round. But imagine walking through these walls or walking around these walls and doing what God's asking you and you're not seeing anything change. And you're around at the 3rd time and you're around at the 4th time. Okay, is it I don't even hear a rumble, right? The walls are not coming down. And I think I would stop. Because I'll be honest, I do that in my walk constantly. And I know I've been in a season of just this cycle of frustration and it's going to change and it's good and I feel it moving and I'm good. And I get around, the wall 5 times, 6 times, and then there's still nothing. And I stop. And we do that. And whatever it is that your walls are, that you're walking around, the thing that you're waiting on, if that's a loved one that you just want to come to Christ and you want them to have that aha moment and it's not happening. Maybe you're in a financial situation and it's not happening. Whatever the case may be, your marriage. You're single and you're wanting to find someone and you're just in this and it's not happening and we're trying to get through. This song says at the start, walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall. But you have never failed me yet. And we listen to stories like that, Bobby, my dad, that told, and it's like, that's great. That's cool that happens to you, but I'm in this waiting. I'm in that 10-year span that you were in, and I'm not seeing it happen. But it goes to the chorus. And this is something we can remind ourselves in the waiting. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. Confidence is faith. This is our faith. This is the thing that's going to get us through. You have never failed me yet. And if you don't think that if you think he's failed you, look back at your life. Whether you've been a follower or not, maybe it's through someone else's life. It goes to the bridge, and that's our acknowledgement is, I've seen you move. You've moved the mountains, and I believe that you will do it again. So as we are in the waiting, maybe you're there, maybe you're not, maybe you're going to be, but is being confident, and maybe that's making this our prayer, is that, Lord, just help us remember that your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. I've seen you move the mountains, and I know you're going to do it again for me. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe that you can do it again. So if you want to listen, if you don't want to sing, if you want to sing whatever, let this be your prayer as we go through the waiting and as we go through our week, because I know sometimes it's small, sometimes it's big. We will be in that season of waiting.
Your faithfulness,
your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail. Promise still the same. Great is your faithfulness. Still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never failed me yet. Oh, I'll never will forget that you never failed me yet. Lord, be with us throughout the waiting. Let us remember in those times that your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Let it be our confidence in the fact that we know you will never fail us. And maybe it's going to be in a different way. Maybe you're going to come through in a different way than we thought. Maybe in a different timing than you thought. But you're coming. And you will be faithful. And it's going to be better and greater than we ever imagined. That we can just keep going. Just keep going around those walls, Lord. Keep us strong. Keep us confident. Let us be faithful in you. We love you. Amen.